My parents called my son a parasite after I refused to help them financially, even after they stole my inheritance. Before continuing the story, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you won't miss more stories, and leave your like on the video. I never thought my own parents would steal from me, but here we are. My name isn't important to this story, but what happened when I turned 17 changed everything I believed about family loyalty. My grandmother was the only person who truly saw me. While my parents obsessed over my older brother's football achievements and college prospects, she'd sit with me for hours talking about books, dreams, and life. She taught me to bake, helped with homework, and made me feel valued when everyone else treated me like background noise. When cancer took her during my junior year, I was devastated. I spent every day after school at the hospital while my parents made occasional visits, usually complaining about parking costs or how the trips disrupted their schedules. But I was there, holding her fragile hand, reading aloud from her favorite novels, just being present in her final weeks. At the funeral, I felt hollow. My parents seemed more focused on logistics than grief, whispering about medical bills and funeral expenses. 3 days later, a lawyer called with shocking news. Grandma had updated her will 6 months before she died, leaving me $100,000. The lawyer read her letter aloud in his sterile office, and her words are burned into my memory. My dearest granddaughter, this money is for your future, your education, your dreams. I've watched how your parents favor your brother, always putting his needs first while ignoring yours. I know they'll try to take this from you. Don't let them. This is my love for you, made real. Use it to build the life you deserve. The letter continued with words that made my stomach clench. I'm heartbroken to write this, but I don't trust your parents with money. They've borrowed from me countless times for your brother's expenses, promising to repay me but never following through. They see money as something that should flow to them, not something they earn through work. Protect yourself, sweetheart. Remember that blood doesn't always mean family, and family doesn't always mean love. Sitting in that office at 17, holding a check for more money than I'd ever imagined, I felt terrified rather than excited. Somehow, deep in my gut, I knew Grandma was right about my parents. Since I was still a minor, the money needed to be held in trust until my 18th birthday in 2 months. My parents immediately volunteered as trustees, using words like responsibility and family duty and what your grandmother would have wanted. They painted themselves as the obvious choice to keep the money safe for me. I desperately wanted to believe them. I wanted to trust that my own parents wouldn't betray me. So despite the warning voice in my head that sounded exactly like Grandma's, I agreed to let them manage the inheritance. That decision would haunt me for years to come. My 18th birthday should have been a celebration. Instead, it became the day I learned that parents could look their child in the eye and lie without flinching. I woke up that morning with butterflies in my stomach, not because of birthday excitement, but because I'd finally gained access to Grandma's gift. I had plans: community college first to save money, then transferring to a 4-year university. Maybe studying education like Grandma had always encouraged, or business so I could be financially independent. The inheritance would make it all possible. My parents called me into the living room after dinner, wearing serious expressions that immediately put me on edge. Dad cleared his throat and launched into what sounded like a rehearsed speech. "Sweetheart, we need to discuss the money your grandmother left you. We've been thinking about this very carefully, and we believe she would have wanted us to make the best decision for the whole family." My stomach started churning. "What do you mean? It's my money now, right? I'm 18. Mom jumped in with tears forming in her eyes. "Your brother's business venture has been struggling. You know how hard he's been working on that food truck concept. He just needs a little more capital to really make it take off. Your grandmother always loved him so much, and she would have wanted to help him succeed. We invested the money in his business," Dad said bluntly. "All of it. It's going to pay off huge dividends for the whole family." The room started spinning. "You invested my inheritance? Without asking me? That money was specifically left to me for college." "We're your parents," Dad snapped, his fake gentleness evaporating. "We know what's best for this family. Your brother's business is going to make us all wealthy. You'll benefit too. But I needed that for school. Grandma left it for my education, not for his business." Mom's tears had dried up remarkably fast. "Don't be selfish. Family helps family. Your grandmother would be ashamed of your attitude." I pulled out Grandma's letter, which I'd kept in my wallet, and read the warnings about exactly this scenario. My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. "That's just her being dramatic," Mom said dismissively. She was getting senile toward the end. She didn't understand business opportunities. She understood you perfectly, I said, my voice shaking with rage and betrayal. She knew you'd take my money and give it to your precious son. She warned me about this exact thing. Don't you dare speak about your grandmother that way, Dad shouted. And don't be ungrateful. We housed you, fed you, clothed you for 18 years. You owe us. I owe you? For doing the legal minimum required of parents? That was my money. My future. It's invested in the family business now, Mom said coldly. Stop being dramatic. You'll get your share when your brother's food truck empire takes off. I stared at these people who had raised me, seeing them clearly for the first time. They'd stolen my inheritance without a second thought, convinced they were entitled to it. They'd betrayed Grandma's explicit wishes and shown complete disregard for my future. Where's the paperwork? I want to see exactly what you did with my money. You don't need to worry about those details, Dad waved dismissively. Just trust us. That night, I called the lawyer who'd read Grandma's will. The news was even worse than I'd imagined. I'm sorry, he said gently. Since they were the trustees, they had legal authority to invest the funds as they saw fit. The food truck business your brother started has already failed. The money is completely gone. The lawyer's words hit me like a physical blow. $100,000. Gone. My brother's food truck venture had lasted exactly 4 months before folding completely. He'd blown through Grandma's carefully saved money on expensive equipment, poor location choices, and what the bankruptcy filing called excessive operational costs. Translation, he'd treated it like play money because it hadn't cost him anything to lose. I confronted my parents the next morning with the bankruptcy documents I'd found online. My brother's business had officially failed 3 weeks ago, but they hadn't bothered telling me. We didn't want to upset you unnecessarily, Mom said, not even looking ashamed. These things happen in business. It's a learning experience. A learning experience? You gambled away my entire future on his learning experience? Dad shrugged. He'll bounce back. Your brother always does. Maybe his next venture will be the big winner. The casual way he said it made my blood boil. They were already planning to fund his next failure, probably by taking whatever they could from me. I realized then that to them, I would always be the backup plan, the one expected to sacrifice for their golden boy. That night, I sat in my room reading Grandma's letter for the 100th time. Her words about family not always meaning love finally made complete sense. She'd known exactly who my parents were and had tried to protect me from them. I'd failed her by trusting the very people she'd warned me about, but I wouldn't fail her memory again. I packed everything that truly mattered to me into 2 suitcases: clothes, books, photos of Grandma, and her letter. I left behind anything my parents had bought, keeping only what I'd purchased with money from my part-time job at the local bookstore. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen where my parents were having coffee and reading the newspaper like nothing had changed. I'm moving out, I announced. Mom looked up with mild annoyance. Don't be ridiculous. Where would you go? You can't afford to live on your own? I'll figure it out. I'm not staying here with people who steal from me. We're your family, Dad said, still not grasping the magnitude of what they'd done. You can't just leave family. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't lie and betray trust. Grandma was my family. You're just people who happen to share my DNA. I grabbed my suitcases from by the front door. Mom finally seemed to realize this wasn't teenage drama. Where will you live? How will you eat? You're being incredibly stupid. I'd rather eat ramen noodles in a studio apartment than live with thieves, I replied. At least I'll be able to respect myself. You'll come crawling back within a week, Dad called after me. The real world doesn't care about your hurt feelings. I turned around one last time. Grandma was right about everything. She knew exactly what kind of people you are. I just wish I'd listened to her from the beginning. Walking away from that house felt like stepping out of a prison I hadn't realized I was in. I had $300 in my checking account, no college fund, and no safety net. But I also had something my parents had tried to take from me: my integrity and my grandmother's memory to honor. I found a tiny basement apartment across town for $400 a month. The landlord took pity on me after I explained my situation and let me pay weekly until I could get ahead. I picked up 2 more part-time jobs, cleaning offices at night and working weekends at a grocery store. It was exhausting, lonely work, but every paycheck felt like a victory. This money was mine, earned through my own effort, and nobody could take it away from me. The next 4 years were the hardest of my life, but also the most important. I worked 3 jobs while taking community college classes, surviving on 5 hours of sleep and determination. My days started at 4 a.m. cleaning office buildings, then classes until afternoon, bookstore work until 8 p.m., and homework until midnight. Rinse and repeat. My basement apartment was barely bigger than my childhood bedroom, with a hot plate for cooking and a mattress on the floor. Some nights I'd eat peanut butter sandwiches for dinner, because that's all I could afford. During my lowest moments, I'd reread Grandma's letter and remember why I was doing this. My parents never called to check if I was okay, never asked if I needed food or help with rent. But they sure found me on social media to complain about my ingratitude and selfishness to anyone who would listen. They painted themselves as heartbroken parents whose ungrateful daughter had abandoned the family over money. My brother, meanwhile, was already working on his next business idea, some kind of app that would revolutionize food delivery. My parents were fully funding this venture too, using money from a second mortgage on their house. They posted constantly about his innovation and entrepreneurial spirit, while never mentioning that his previous business had gone bankrupt, using someone else's inheritance. I learned to block out their noise and focus on my goals. Community college led to a scholarship at the state university, where I double majored in business and education while working in the campus library. I lived in the cheapest dorm available and ate more ramen than any human should consume, but I was building something real. My grades were excellent because I knew this was my only shot. While other students partied and complained about cafeteria food, I studied in empty classrooms and appreciated having reliable meals. Everything I had, I'd earned myself, and that made it infinitely more valuable than anything my parents had ever given me. During my senior year, I started getting job offers from several companies that recruited on campus. The interviews went well because I had something most recent graduates lacked: genuine hunger and work ethic. I wasn't afraid of long hours or starting at the bottom because I'd been working since I was 18. I accepted a position with a marketing firm in Denver, starting at $38,000 a year. It wasn't a fortune, but it was salary plus benefits. And after years of scraping by, it felt like winning the lottery. The night before graduation, I sat in my tiny dorm room and wrote a letter to Grandma, even though she couldn't read it. I told her about the struggles, the victories, and how her words had kept me going when everything seemed impossible. I promised her that I would never forget the lessons she'd taught me about integrity and self-respect. At graduation, I looked out at the crowd and saw my roommate's family cheering, other students' parents taking pictures, and grandparents crying with pride. For a moment, I felt the familiar ache of being alone, but then I remembered something Grandma used to say. Sometimes being alone is better than being surrounded by people who don't truly see you. She was right. I was alone, but I was free. Free from people who would steal my dreams to fund their favorite child's failures. Free from the toxic dynamic that had made me feel worthless for so many years. Free to build the life Grandma had envisioned for me, even if it took longer and required more sacrifice than originally planned. Moving to Denver meant starting over again, but this time I wasn't running from betrayal. I was running toward opportunity. Denver became the place where I rebuilt my life from scratch. The marketing firm job was everything I'd hoped for: challenging work, supportive colleagues, and room for advancement. After years of survival mode, I could finally focus on building a career instead of just paying bills. I threw myself into work with the same intensity I'd brought to college. While other new hires complained about long hours, I stayed late perfecting presentations and volunteering for difficult projects. My childhood had taught me that nothing worthwhile comes easy, and I wasn't afraid of hard work. By 25, I'd been promoted twice and was managing my own accounts. By 30, I was a senior manager earning 6 figures. But the real transformation happened when I met my future husband at a company networking event. He was everything my family had never been: kind, supportive, and genuinely interested in my thoughts and dreams. When I told him about my grandmother and what had happened with my inheritance, he didn't minimize my pain or suggest I should get over it. Instead, he listened with the kind of attention Grandma used to give me, and then he said something that changed everything. "Your grandmother sounds like she was an incredible woman. She'd be so proud of what you've accomplished on your own." We dated for 2 years before getting engaged, and during that time he never once pressured me to reconcile with my parents. He understood that some relationships are too toxic to repair, and that family isn't defined by shared DNA. Our wedding was small, just close friends and his family, who welcomed me with open arms. His parents treated me like the daughter they'd never had, showing me what healthy family relationships actually look like. They were proud of my achievements and never made me feel like I had to prove my worth. When our son was born 6 years ago, I experienced a love so fierce and protective that it helped me understand Grandma's feelings toward me. Looking at this perfect little person, I couldn't imagine ever putting him second to anyone or anything. The idea of stealing from him or betraying his trust was incomprehensible. My husband and I built a beautiful life together. We bought a 4-bedroom house in a great school district, saved diligently, and created the stable, loving home I'd always dreamed of. By age 36, I was earning $350,000 annually as a marketing director, and we had substantial savings and investments. Our 12-year-old son is thriving in middle school, straight A's, soccer team captain, and the kind of confident, happy kid I'd never been. When he talks about his dreams, we listen and encourage him, just like Grandma had done for me. He'll never have to work 3 jobs to pay for college or choose between eating and buying textbooks. Sometimes I wonder what Grandma would think of the man I married and the grandson she never got to meet. I think she'd love seeing how we prioritize our son without spoiling him, how we've taught him the value of hard work and integrity. Most importantly, she'd see that her sacrifice and love had created ripples that continue to spread through generations. My parents, meanwhile, had remained completely absent from my adult life. No congratulations on my wedding, no acknowledgement of their grandson's existence, no curiosity about whether I was even alive. Their silence spoke volumes about their priorities and values, but recently that silence had begun to crack, and I should have known it wouldn't last forever. The first contact came through a Facebook message from my mother when my son was 8 years old. After nearly 2 decades of silence, her message was brief and manipulative. "I found your profile. You have a son? He's our grandson too. Family should know family. Your father isn't getting any younger." I showed the message to my husband, who immediately saw through the emotional manipulation. "They want something," he said. "People don't break 18 years of silence just to reconnect." I was tempted to ignore it completely, but curiosity got the better of me. I responded with a simple message. "You chose not to be involved in my life when you stole my inheritance. My son doesn't need grandparents who prioritize money over family." My mother's reply came within hours. "That was so long ago. We made mistakes, but we're family. Your grandmother would want us to reconcile. Think about your son growing up without his extended family." The audacity of invoking Grandma's name made my blood pressure spike. But there was something desperate in her tone that made me wonder what was really going on. A quick social media search revealed that my brother's latest business venture had failed spectacularly, leaving him bankrupt and living in my parents' basement at age 40. Against my husband's advice, I agreed to meet my mother for coffee. She looked older, more tired, but still carried herself with the same entitled attitude I remembered. Her first words weren't an apology. They were a complaint about how hard it had been to find me. "We've missed so much of your life," she said, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "And our grandson, we don't even know him." "You had 18 years to reach out," I replied. "Why now? Can't a mother want to reconnect with her daughter? Family is important, especially as we get older. Life is fragile." She talked about aging, about regrets, about wanting to be part of her grandson's life. It sounded almost sincere until she casually mentioned their financial struggles. "Your brother's going through a rough patch. The economy has been so hard on small businesses, and your father's medical bills are mounting up. We're not asking for charity, but family helps family, right? Your grandmother always said that." There it was. The real reason for the sudden interest in reconciliation. "How much?" I asked bluntly. She looked shocked by my directness. "It's not about money. It's about family. Everything with you has always been about money. How much do you need this time?" "Well, if you insist on discussing finances, we could use help with some immediate expenses. Maybe 10,000 to get caught up on bills. Nothing major for someone in your position." I almost laughed. 10,000 was nothing major? That was more than I'd lived on for an entire year during college. "I need to think about this," I said, standing to leave. "Don't take too long," she called after me. "Time is a luxury we don't all have." At home, my husband was furious. "They ignored your existence for 18 years, but now that they need money, suddenly you're family again? Don't give them a penny." But despite my better judgment, I found myself wanting to believe that maybe, finally, they had genuinely changed. Maybe they really did want a relationship with their grandson. Maybe family reconciliation was possible. I sent them $5,000 with a clear message. "This is a one-time gift. Not a loan. Use it wisely." Their gratitude lasted exactly 3 weeks before the next request arrived. The requests became more frequent and more urgent. First, it was $2,000 for car repairs, then $3,000 for my brother's job training program, then $1,500 for medical copays. Each request came with the same emotional manipulation. family loyalty, grandma's wishes, and their grandson deserving to know his extended family. My husband grew increasingly frustrated watching me cave to their demands. "You're enabling them," he warned. "They see you as their personal ATM, not their daughter." But I kept hoping that eventually they'd stabilize, and we could have a genuine relationship. I wanted my son to have grandparents, even complicated ones. So over 2 years, I sent them nearly $30,000, always with the caveat that each payment was the last one. Then came the phone call that changed everything. I was at work when my mother called, sobbing hysterically. "Your father is in the hospital. He had a massive heart attack. The doctors don't know if he'll make it." My stomach dropped. Despite everything, I didn't want him to die. "Which hospital? I'll drive down immediately." "Wait," she said, her tears suddenly stopping. "There's more. The hospital bills are going to be enormous, and our insurance has such high deductibles. But that's not the worst part. We're going to lose the house." "What do you mean lose the house?" "We took out a second mortgage a few years ago to help your brother with his business. Now we're behind on payments. And with your father unable to work, we can't catch up. The bank is foreclosing. We need $300,000 within 60 days, or we'll be homeless." The number hit me like a physical blow. $300,000 was more than 5 times what they'd originally stolen from me. "Mom, I don't have that kind of cash available. That's an enormous amount of money." "But you make good money now. Surely you could get a loan or borrow against your house. We're desperate. We're going to end up on the streets." "Have you explored other options? Bankruptcy? Refinancing? Selling the house and downsizing?" "We can't sell it. We owe more than it's worth because of the second mortgage. And bankruptcy would ruin our credit forever. You're our only hope." The desperation in her voice was real, but so was the familiar pattern of poor financial decisions, followed by demands that I fix the consequences. "I need to discuss this with my husband and see what's possible," I said. "Please don't take too long. The foreclosure process moves fast, and we're running out of time." That night, my husband and I had the most serious conversation of our marriage. He was adamant that we shouldn't risk our son's college fund and our retirement security to bail out people who had already proven they couldn't be trusted with money. "They stole your inheritance for your brother's business, and now they've lost their house funding another one of his failures. When will it end? What happens when he needs money for the next venture?" He was right, but the thought of my parents becoming homeless felt unbearable. Despite their flaws, they were still the people who had raised me. What if I go down there and talk to them face to face? Maybe I can help them find other solutions, or at least understand the full situation before we make any decisions. "Fine," he said reluctantly, "but I'm coming with you. And we're not committing to anything without seeing all their financial documents first. Actually, I think I should go alone. This is something I need to handle myself. It's my family mess to sort out." He looked concerned but agreed. "Just promise me you won't make any decisions in the heat of the moment. Come home first so we can discuss everything rationally." I booked a flight for the following weekend, not knowing I was walking into the most devastating confrontation of my adult life. Walking into my childhood home felt like entering a time warp, but a shabby one. The house looked tired and neglected, peeling paint, overgrown yard, and furniture that hadn't been updated since I'd left. My father looked pale and weak from his heart attack, sitting in his old recliner with medication bottles covering the side table. My brother was there too, looking embarrassed and defensive. At 42, he still had the same entitled attitude that had cost me my inheritance, but now it was mixed with the defeated posture of someone whose schemes had finally caught up with him. My mother had prepared what she clearly thought would be a reconciliation dinner, complete with my old favorite foods. The gesture might have been touching if I hadn't known it was calculated manipulation, designed to soften me up for the financial ask. "It's so wonderful to have you home," she gushed, taking pictures of me at the dinner table like we were a normal, happy family. "Your father has been talking nonstop about seeing you." Dad nodded weakly. "We've missed you, kiddo. I know we made mistakes when you were younger, but family is what matters in the end." The conversation stayed pleasant through dinner, but I could feel the tension building. Finally, after dessert, they got to the real agenda. "So, you understand about the house situation," Mom began carefully. "We've explored every option, but nothing works without a significant cash infusion. We're hoping you can help us save our family home." "I've been thinking about it constantly," I said honestly. "But $300,000 would mean borrowing against my own house and depleting my son's college fund. That's not a decision I can make lightly." "But surely you can afford it," my brother interjected. "You make more in 1 year than most people see in 5. This would barely impact your lifestyle." His presumption about my finances irritated me. My lifestyle includes saving for my child's future and my own retirement. I can't just liquidate everything because you've made poor financial decisions. Poor financial decisions? My mother's voice rose an octave. Your father nearly died and all you can talk about is money? I'm sorry Dad is sick, but his heart attack didn't cause your mortgage problems. You've been behind on payments for months because you keep funding failed business ventures. Those are investments in family, Dad said defensively. Your brother has great ideas. Sometimes businesses take time to succeed. He's had great ideas for 24 years. And they've all failed. At what point do you stop throwing good money after bad? My brother stood up angrily. My businesses failed because of market conditions, not because the ideas were bad. You've never supported anything I've tried to do. I've never supported them because they're funded with other people's money. First my inheritance, now your parents' house. You've never risked your own security for these ventures. That inheritance should have benefited the whole family anyway, Mom snapped. Your grandmother was being selfish, leaving everything to you when your brother needed help getting started in life. The old rage flared up in my chest. That money was left to me specifically for college. Grandma knew exactly what she was doing, and she was right to worry about you taking it. She was a bitter old woman who poisoned your mind against your own family, Dad said, his weakness forgotten in his anger. She was the only one who actually cared about my future instead of treating me like a backup bank account. The room erupted. Years of suppressed resentment came pouring out from all directions. My parents accused me of being cold and selfish, prioritizing money over family. My brother called me privileged and ungrateful, claiming I'd forgotten my working-class roots. But it was my mother's next words that crossed the line of no return. If you can't help your own parents in their time of need, then you're no better than that spoiled brat of yours. You've turned into just another selfish rich person who doesn't care about anyone but yourself and that little parasite you're raising. The silence that followed was deafening. She had just called my innocent 12-year-old son a parasite. My beautiful, kind, hard-working boy who had never hurt anyone. She'd called him a parasite for the crime of being my priority. What did you just call my son? My voice was deadly quiet. She realized she'd gone too far, but instead of apologizing, she doubled down. I'm just saying that you care more about that boy than your own parents who raised and sacrificed for you. Get out, I said, standing up. This is our house, Dad protested. Then I'll leave. But first, let me be absolutely clear. You will never speak about my son that way again. He is not a parasite. He's a child whose mother loves him enough to put his needs first, something you never understood. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, but Mom's voice stopped me. Don't you walk away from us. We're your family. We deserve better than this. I turned around one last time. Grandma warned me about exactly this conversation. She knew you'd eventually show your true colors. Calling my son a parasite while begging for money proved she was right about everything. Your grandmother was a bitter, manipulative woman who turned you against us, Mom screamed. That was the final straw. Everything I'd held back for 18 years came pouring out, and there was no putting it back. Something inside me snapped when she insulted Grandma. All the years of suppressed anger, hurt, and betrayal came roaring to the surface like a dam bursting. Don't you dare call her manipulative, I said, my voice shaking with fury. She was the only one who loved me unconditionally. She was the only one who saw me as more than a source of funding for your golden boy's failures. She turned you against your own family, Dad yelled from his chair. No, you turned me against you when you stole my inheritance. She didn't have to turn me against anything. She just warned me about exactly who you are. And 20 years later, here you are proving her right by calling my son a parasite while begging for money. My brother stepped forward aggressively. You've always thought you were better than us. College girl with her fancy job, living in your big house while your family struggles. I worked 3 jobs to pay for that college education after you lost my tuition money. I lived on peanut butter sandwiches and slept on a mattress on the floor while you were living here rent-free. Funded by my inheritance. That inheritance was supposed to help the whole family, Mom screamed. Your grandmother was selfish leaving it all to you. She left it to me because she knew you'd waste it on him. And guess what? That's exactly what you did. $100,000 gone in 4 months on a food truck that failed because he was too lazy to show up consistently. You don't know anything about running a business, my brother snarled. I know enough not to risk other people's money on pipe dreams. I know enough not to lose my parents' house funding another one of your brilliant ideas. The room was chaos now, everyone yelling over each other. But through the noise, my mother's voice cut like a knife. At least your brother tries to help this family instead of hoarding his money like some kind of miser. Help this family? He's bankrupted you twice. First with my money, now with your house. When has he ever helped anyone but himself? He's family, Dad shouted weakly. Family supports family no matter what. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't call innocent children parasites. Family doesn't ignore their daughter for 18 years and then suddenly care when they need money. We reached out because we love you, Mom sobbed, but the tears looked fake now. You reached out because you're broke. If I was still working 3 jobs and living in that basement apartment, you wouldn't have given me a second thought. The only thing that changed is my bank account. My brother laughed bitterly. Listen to yourself. You sound just like her, that bitter old woman who poisoned you against us. Grandma wasn't bitter. She was realistic. She saw exactly what kind of people you are, and she tried to protect me from it. The only mistake I made was not listening to her sooner. She was a senile old bat who didn't know what she was talking about. Mom snarled, all pretense of grief gone now. That was it. The final line crossed. I felt something cold and final settle in my chest. Get this straight, I said, my voice eerily calm now. Grandma was the smartest, most loving person I've ever known. She worked double shifts as a teacher and saved every penny of that inheritance for my future. She knew you were users and manipulators, and she was 100% right. Don't you dare, Dad started. I'm not finished, I cut him off. You want to know what she really said in that letter? She said that blood doesn't always mean family, and family doesn't always mean love. She said some people are just takers who drain everyone around them dry. Looking at you right now, I understand exactly what she meant. You're going to regret this, my brother threatened. When we lose this house, it'll be on your conscience. No, I said firmly. Your bad decisions are on your conscience. I don't owe you anything just because we share DNA. I have a real family now. A husband who loves me, and a son who deserves better than being called a parasite by his so-called grandparents. I headed for the door again, but Mom's final words stopped me cold. Fine, walk away, but don't come crying to us when that precious son of yours turns out to be just as selfish and ungrateful as you are. I turned around slowly, and when I spoke, my voice was deadly quiet. My son will never have to wonder if his parents love him conditionally. He'll never have his inheritance stolen or be ignored for 18 years. He'll never be treated as less important than his siblings, and most importantly, he'll never have to choose between his dignity and his family's approval. You'll regret cutting us off, Dad called weakly. The only thing I regret is wasting $30,000 on people who see kindness as weakness and generosity as obligation. Grandma tried to save me from this exact moment, and I'm finally ready to listen to her. I walked out of that house knowing I would never return. The sound of their shouting followed me to my rental car. But for the first time in my adult life, I felt completely free from their manipulation. The flight home couldn't come fast enough. I had a real family waiting for me. One built on love and respect instead of guilt and obligation. And I had some serious thinking to do about how to honor Grandma's memory while protecting the people who actually mattered. The moment I walked through my front door, my husband took one look at my face and knew everything had gone wrong. My son was at a friend's house for a sleepover, so we had privacy to talk about the disaster that had just unfolded. They called him a parasite, I said without preamble. They called our 12-year-old son a parasite for the crime of being my priority. My husband's face went through several expressions before settling on cold fury. They said, "What about our son?" I collapsed onto our couch and told him everything, the demands, the manipulation, the explosion, and the final insults. When I got to the part about them disparaging Grandma, his jaw clenched visibly. "I want to drive down there right now and have a conversation with them," he said, pacing around our living room. "How dare they speak about our child that way? How dare they disrespect your grandmother's memory after everything she did for you?" "I handled it," I said quietly. I told them exactly what I thought of them, and I walked away. But I keep thinking about something Grandma wrote in her letter. What's that? She said that sometimes the people who hurt us reveal who they really are when they're desperate. She said that's when you see their true priorities and values. Well, now I've seen theirs. My husband sat down beside me and took my hand. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that I've spent 20 years trying to be the bigger person, trying to maintain some connection to them despite what they did. But they just proved that nothing has changed. They still see me as their personal bank account, and they'll say anything, even attack our innocent child, to get what they want. So what do you want to do?" I was quiet for a long moment, processing the rage and hurt and final clarity that had settled in my chest. I want to honor Grandma's memory by protecting our family from these toxic people. And I want to make sure they never have the power to hurt us again. What does that look like practically? I pulled out my phone and started researching. Well, their house is going into foreclosure, right? They need $300,000 and they're running out of time. You're not seriously considering giving them the money after what they just said? No, I said with a smile that felt dangerous. I'm considering something else entirely. Over the next hour, I researched foreclosure processes, property values, and investment opportunities. What I found was very interesting. Their house is worth about $400,000 in the current market, I explained to my increasingly intrigued husband. They owe $300,000 on their mortgages. If I buy it at the foreclosure auction, I'd own it outright for roughly $320,000 after fees and costs. And then what? Then I become their landlord. I offer them a lease agreement with very specific terms: market rate rent, regular payment schedule, and absolute respect for the property and their neighbors. If they can't meet those terms, they get evicted. My husband stared at me for a moment, then started laughing. That's brilliant. You save their house, but on your terms instead of theirs. It's also a good investment. The property is in a desirable area, and if they can't handle the arrangement, I can rent it to someone else or sell it for a profit. What if they refuse the lease agreement? Then they can find somewhere else to live. I'll have offered them a solution, just not the free bailout they were expecting. We spent the rest of the evening researching the logistics. I contacted a real estate attorney to understand the foreclosure process and what it would take to buy the property. The timeline was tight, but it was definitely possible. The more I thought about it, the more it felt like exactly what Grandma would have done. She was never cruel or vindictive, but she also never rewarded bad behavior or enabled irresponsible people. This solution protected our family's financial security, while still offering my parents a path forward, if they were willing to take responsibility for their situation. When my son came home from his sleepover the next morning, full of stories about video games and junk food, I looked at his bright, innocent face and felt even more certain about my decision. This child would grow up knowing he was unconditionally loved and protected. He would never be called names or treated as less important than someone else's priorities. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked, noticing my intense expression. "I'm perfect, sweetheart. Just thinking about how much I love you." He rolled his eyes with the typical preteen embarrassment, but I could see the pleased smile he was trying to hide. That afternoon, I called the real estate attorney and started the process of preparing for the foreclosure auction. I also called a property management company to discuss handling the rental if my parents agreed to stay. It was time to play chess instead of checkers, and I was finally ready to make the moves Grandma had trained me for. The foreclosure auction was scheduled for a Tuesday morning 3 weeks later. I flew back to town the night before and stayed at a hotel near the courthouse, spending the evening reviewing my strategy with the real estate attorney who would be bidding on my behalf. "Are you sure about this approach?" she asked for the third time. "It's a significant financial commitment, and dealing with family members as tenants can be complicated." "I'm certain," I replied. "This isn't about revenge, it's about setting healthy boundaries while still offering them a solution." The auction itself was surprisingly quick and businesslike. Several investors had shown interest in the property, but I'd authorized bidding up to $350,000 to ensure we won. We got it for $315,000, plus fees. I now owned my parents' house. The hardest part was the phone call I made an hour later. "Mom, it's me. I wanted to let you know that I bought your house at the foreclosure auction this morning." The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Finally, "You did what?" "I bought the house. You no longer owe the bank anything. The foreclosure is resolved." "I don't understand. Are you giving it back to us?" "Not exactly. I'm offering you a lease agreement to continue living there. The rent would be $1,800 per month, which is below market rate for a house that size. The lease would include standard terms about property maintenance and timely payments." Another long silence. "You're making us rent our own house from you. You're renting a house that was about to be foreclosed on. I prevented you from becoming homeless, but I'm not giving you a free house after you called my son a parasite. This is insane. You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. The lease agreement is fair and reasonable. You can sign it and stay, or you can find somewhere else to live. Those are your options." I heard her calling my father and brother to the phone, and soon I was on speaker with all three of them. "This is extortion," my brother said immediately. "This is a business arrangement. I own property, and I'm offering to rent it at a below-market rate. You can accept the terms or decline." "We're your family," Dad protested, his voice still weak from the heart attack. "Family doesn't steal inheritance money. Family doesn't call innocent children parasites. Family doesn't ignore their relatives for 18 years unless they need money. You taught me that biology doesn't equal loyalty. You can't do this to us, Mom said, crying again. I can, and I did. The house is in my name as of this morning. You have until the end of the month to decide if you want to sign the lease or move out. What if we can't afford the rent? Dad asked. Then you'll need to find somewhere you can afford just like everyone else does. I've offered you a solution that keeps you in your home at a reasonable cost. What you do with that opportunity is up to you. My brother's voice was venomous. This is sick. You're enjoying this. I'm not enjoying anything. I'm protecting my family from people who have proven they can't be trusted. Grandma tried to teach me that 20 years ago, but I had to learn it the hard way. Don't bring her into this, Mom snapped. She's already in this. This house purchase is an investment for my son's future, the same son you called a parasite. The rental income will help fund his college education, just like Grandma's inheritance was supposed to do for me. The call devolved into shouting and accusations, but I'd said everything I needed to say. I hung up and turned off my phone. The property management company I'd hired would handle all future communications about the lease. If my parents wanted to stay, they'd deal with professionals who wouldn't be swayed by emotional manipulation or guilt trips. 2 weeks later, I received word that they'd signed the lease agreement. They were staying, but they'd have to follow the same rules as any other tenants, no exceptions for family status. Flying home, I felt lighter than I had in years. My son met me at the airport with a huge hug and excited chatter about his soccer game. Did you handle your business stuff? He asked as we drove home. Yes, sweetheart. Everything is taken care of. Good. I missed you. Looking at his trusting face in the rearview mirror, I knew I'd made the right choice. Some people might call my actions harsh, but protecting your child from toxic family members isn't harsh. It's necessary. Grandma would have been proud. 3 years have passed since I bought my parents' house, and the clarity that decision brought to my life has been transformative. The rental income, $1,800 every month, paid promptly through the property management company, goes directly into my son's college fund. It's poetic justice that the house my brother's failures nearly cost them is now securing my child's educational future. My parents have been model tenants, which tells me they're perfectly capable of responsibility when consequences are clear and immediate. They maintain the property, pay rent on time, and follow all lease terms. We have no direct contact. All communication goes through the management company, which keeps things purely business. My brother moved out 6 months after I bought the house, apparently unable to handle living somewhere his sister was technically the landlord. Last I heard through mutual acquaintances, he's working a regular job for the first time in his adult life. Sometimes rock bottom is the only foundation solid enough to build on. My son is now 15, thriving in high school with plans to study engineering. He's never met his biological grandparents, and when he asks about my family, I tell him the truth in age-appropriate ways. Some people aren't capable of healthy relationships, and that's okay because we can choose our own family from people who truly love and support us. My husband's parents have filled the grandparent role beautifully, attending every soccer game, school play, and birthday party with genuine enthusiasm. They've shown my son what unconditional love looks like, and he's never felt the absence of people who would only value him conditionally. Last month, I received an unexpected call from the property management company. My parents wanted to know if I'd be interested in selling the house back to them. Apparently, Dad's health had improved enough for him to return to work, and they'd been saving money by living responsibly for the first time in decades. The offer was fair, $380,000, which would give me a nice profit on the investment. But after discussing it with my husband, I declined. The house represents more than just financial security now. It's proof that actions have consequences, that manipulation doesn't always work, and that sometimes the people who hurt us teach us exactly how strong we can be. My son will inherit that house someday, along with the story of how his grandmother's wisdom and his mother's backbone turned a family betrayal into generational wealth. He'll understand that real family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about people who show up consistently, who protect each other's dreams, and who never make love conditional on compliance. I think about Grandma often, especially when I'm helping my son with homework or cheering at his games. She never got to meet her great-grandson, but her influence shaped every aspect of how I parent him. She taught me that love means protecting someone's future, not just making them happy in the moment. The other day, my son found her old letter in my jewelry box and asked about it. I let him read it, and when he finished, he said something that would have made her so proud. She sounds like she really loved you. I'm sorry your parents were so mean to her. She did love me, I replied. And she'd love you too. She always said the best revenge against people who underestimate you is living well and raising good kids. Is that what you did? Got revenge? I thought about it carefully. I don't think what I did was revenge. I think it was justice. There's a difference between hurting someone to make yourself feel better and protecting your family from people who can't be trusted. He nodded seriously, processing this distinction with the gravity that makes me so proud of the young man he's becoming. Looking back, I realized that my parents gave me the greatest gift possible, though not intentionally. By showing me exactly what selfish, conditional love looks like, they taught me to recognize and create the opposite. By stealing my inheritance, they forced me to develop the strength and independence that eventually led to far greater success than that original $100,000 ever could have provided. And by calling my son a parasite, they revealed their true nature so clearly that I finally stopped hoping they would change. Some stories don't have reconciliation or forgiveness, and that's okay. Sometimes the healthiest ending is understanding that you deserved better all along, and then making sure the next generation gets exactly that. My son will never wonder if he's loved. He'll never have his dreams sacrificed for someone else's convenience. He'll never be called names or treated as a burden. Most importantly, he'll grow up knowing that family means people who invest in your future, not people who steal from it. Grandma would be so proud of the life we built from the ashes of her warnings. And someday, when my son has children of his own, he'll understand exactly why some people are worth fighting for, and others are worth walking away from. That's the real inheritance she left me. Not money, but wisdom. And that's a gift that keeps growing with every generation.